and welcome to episode 5 of the Chris Haas Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. And a very special thanks to those of you that have liked and subscribed to my YouTube channel. If you haven't done so, please go ahead and jump over to YouTube and click the bell while you're there. We'll be delivering forward-thinking content weekly. I'm also available on other social media platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So, as always, let's go ahead and recap episode 4, part 2 from last week. We discussed paperwork and why it is such a critical part of your sales process. You must be fastidious, especially if you have your sights on moving into F&I. If you really want to succeed in the dealership and have a career, don't skip the F&I step, by the way. We will talk about this in future episodes. I know there's some GMs and GSMs out there without the F&I ability, and I believe it does hurt them. So this is going to be a crucial step in your career, and make sure that you do take that step. So legal compliance, as we also talked about in the last episode. Courts are cracking down and they are looking to perpetuate convictions. You know, in between the time that we've made this last episode and we're creating this one now, I noticed an article come across my Instagram feed stating how there may be a class action suit against AutoNation. So just think about that. If they're going after the big dogs like this, what's going to happen to the smaller dealerships? So again, courts are looking to perpetuate convictions here in 2022. So this is the time now to make sure you are on point and dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's. So, and think about this. If you do have to go to court, following a process is very, very important. One of the first things that a judge is going to ask you is, how could you possibly remember what you did or what you said to that client on May 15th, 2019? Well, you could simply answer that question by stating you follow the exact same process with every customer every single time. You can go back and you can audit all our deals and you'll see that all of our deals have the exact same documents in them, and that's proof that a process is being followed. And it is something that can definitely help you if you did have to be in a situation where you had to go to court. So keep that in mind. In episode 4, part 2, we also spoke about the difference between a co-buyer and a co-signer, right? We spoke about communicating that properly with your F&I department just so there's no paperwork issues. We discussed effective trade appraisals and how you want to operate, right? We talked about some, I want to say, good ways in order to get that ACV up on the car a little bit. Make sure the air conditioning's cranked up on a hot day for the used car manager in that car. And on a colder day, make sure you have the air or the heat cranked up nice and warm in the vehicle, right? Never going to hurt when the used car manager hops behind the wheel of the car and they feel happy. So again, in light of compliance, be sure that all the documents that we reviewed in episode 4, part 2 are going to agree before the deal goes into the F&I department. So if you've tuned in today because you're in a single point store, that's great. If not, please follow along and learn these documents now. Just as we previously discussed, you'll have a better chance of getting referrals. If clients have questions after they come out of the F&I office, it's always great for you to be able to come across from a place of authority rather than running back to the F&I manager. So hopefully you did your homework from episode 4, part 2, and you went ahead and grabbed the deal jacket, right? I mentioned very simply, get with your F&I department, grab a deal jacket, a cash deal, build on that for a finance and a lease deal jacket so you could see what that paperwork looks like. So let's go ahead and jump right into those documents today. We're going to deep dive into the F&I documents and help you along with them. So F&I managers, first and foremost, vet all documents that come from the sales department with great care. I would go through them, as my dad always said, with a fine-tooth comb. You are the last person, the last manager that's involved in this deal, and it really is your job to protect the dealer's assets at all costs. Now, speaking about being the last manager involved in the deal, think about how important that is too, and think about what's going to resonate with that client. So make sure that they are happy and they're having a good experience with you in the F&I office. If you have a gut feeling or an inkling that something might be wrong, you might want to identify that right there. Again, you're usually the last manager that is speaking with that person before they leave the dealership. So, breaking into the paperwork here, I would highly recommend that you do not start with the menu. I know a lot of folks out there recommend that you do, but I would not start with that menu. Start and break the ice with a few non-confrontational business documents, which we're going to jump into right now. So first off, your title and registration and application, as you can see up on the screen here, and you can see the one that I have in my hand. This is Arizona's copy. Here in Arizona, it's called the 960236. In other states, they certainly go by different names. In New Jersey, I know it's called the BA49. In New York, they use two separate documents, which would be an MV50 and an MV82. So again, these documents are state specific. Just be aware of what they are and make sure you're doing a good job handling those documents. Your odometer disclosure statements. So as we discussed last time, in episode 4, part 2, you're definitely going to want to make sure that you have one for the sold unit and one for the trade-in if applicable. Now, to elaborate on the importance of this a little bit, I remember a few years back, I was in a new car store, a deal went down, went through F&I, customers were thrilled, they came out, and when they got behind the wheel of their new car, first words out of their mouth, well, this is not my vehicle. It's got 336 miles on it. Well, it was a swap vehicle. Nobody took notice of that. The salesperson, I want to say, didn't do the best job with the paperwork and just marked down 8 miles thinking it was a new vehicle or whatever it may be. And even though we were able to hold the deal together, just certainly wasn't a great thing to have to deal with, right? So you can see up on the screen here, we have those generic odometer disclosure statements. Make sure, again, you're doing a good job with those. Sales, make sure you're communicating with F&I and you are looking at the mileage on the vehicle. Your limited power of attorney and bill of sale payoff authorization form. So this is a 4-part form, which I love. If you have the ability to use this in your state, this would be great because you could see there's 2 power of attorneys, one for the new vehicle, one for the pre-owned vehicle. You have your bill of sale and your payoff authorization on there as well. So these are always great and easy forms to use. If they vary by state and you do have to use separate limited power of attorneys, that's no big deal. Again, don't let, folks get scared when they hear power of attorney. I used to always just say, hey, this is for motor vehicle purposes only. And most folks simply understand that, you're not giving them a power of attorney to their estate or anything of that nature. So again, very easy and non-threatening document. Next up, this is where I would bring in the menu at this point. So you've broken the ice a little bit, right? Hopefully you went out and you did a really good interview process, which we are going to talk about in future episodes. But your menu, as you can see, we have a generic one up on the screen here. You want to make sure that is tailored to the interview that you did. And again, this is a great point to introduce this now. You have gone through a few documents, clients are feeling a little more comfortable with you, and you are not coming off as a salesperson right out of the gate. So once you've completed your menu, make sure that you are using a disclosure form. As you can see up here on the screen, we have a generic copy of a disclosure as well. So to elaborate a little bit on this as well, a terrible situation. I recall many years back, I was doing work with an assignment out in the Carolinas. Folks left the dealership and they were not offered credit, life, accident, and health insurance. Well, very shortly after their departure from the dealership, they were in a major accident where unfortunately someone was killed. The customer that purchased the vehicle was killed. Well, that person's family came back and filed many lawsuits against the dealership, one of them being for the fact that the clients were not offered credit, life, accident, and health insurance. So on that bad note, I also have a great story about that on the flip side. I remember when I was working at a Honda dealer many years back, I had a client that was on the fence about purchasing a gap waiver. They did go ahead and do it because they had significant inequity in their vehicle. Later that night, their vehicle was totaled due to a flood. And the next day when they came back to me, they were so thrilled. They were so happy that they got the gap insurance. I remember these folks' faces, and I can remember we were able to get them into a brand new Honda Pilot, covered the inequity in their other vehicle, and there were no issues. So these disclosure forms are key. Make sure that you do have them in place because it could help you avoid a lawsuit to the dealership. Right, F&I managers, we spoke about one of your primary responsibilities. It is protecting the dealer's assets. So next document we have up is the certification of status of the vehicle for the trade. This is a simple form. This is a copy of what we use here in Arizona. It's just stating that the vehicle is not salvage, that there's no liens or encumbrances on the vehicle. So again, very simple vehicle or document you want to make sure you use if a trade vehicle is involved with the sale. Next up, we have our 3-day disclosure. This is the emissions document. Again, this is going to vary by state. This here in Arizona is called the IM 147. Just be abreast of what the emissions rules are in your states and make sure you're using those appropriate documents for that. Next up, we have our buyer's guide. So just as we talked about in episode 4, part 2, right? We said that we want to make sure the salesperson is going to go ahead and remove the buyer's guide from the pre-owned vehicle and have the client sign off on the back. F&I managers double check and make sure that was done. And if you, again, as I mentioned, right, salespeople, get this document ready and have one up in your trade-in if applicable. It is very important that you have this document inside the vehicle while it is on your lot. Next up, the bill of sale. Again, this is going to be state specific. We spoke about earlier how this can be included with the 4-part power of attorney, which I'm a fan of. Here in Arizona, we do have a separate bill of sale, as you can see right here, and it's also up on your screen. This is specific to car dealers. So again, very easy document that you want to go ahead and go through. Make sure that you are using this. Next up, the ATPI. We also spoke about this back in episode 4, part 2. This is going to be the more official copy. You could see you have a sample up on your screen here as well. These may vary by manufacturer, by whichever bank you are using as well. So again, make sure that the salesperson did verify insurance. If you do need physical insurance cards for that vehicle before you roll it, make sure that you do have those on hand in the office before you let that car go. As we had previously discussed too, some states have a 72-hour rule where you can go ahead and roll that car as long as comprehensive, or as long as the clients have comprehensive insurance on their existing vehicle. Next up, the We Owe. So another document that can definitely keep you out of trouble here. If you don't owe anything on the vehicle, or you don't owe anything to the client, rather, on the vehicle that you've sold, make sure you simply mark that down here. Simply type in, "We owe nothing," and have them sign off on that. You know, I've heard horror stories in the past of salespeople that have basically promised the world to clients. They've promised spoilers, aftermarket rims, whatever it might be. And then that salesperson blows out, and a month later, those folks are coming back to the dealership and there's no evidence in the deal. So I know that we certainly spoke in earlier episodes about being upstanding salespeople. Unfortunately, there are some out there who may not be the most flavorful folks, right? Might do the wrong thing. So just a way, again, to protect the dealer's assets is making sure that you are using this We Owe form. Next up, our credit application. So we did discuss this in our previous episode as well. I would recommend that when the deal goes into F&I, you retype a copy of this and have the client sign off on that. Just in case some extra income was found or something was changed, you want to make sure that you have a typed copy of this application and have the client's ink signatures on it. Next up, the buyer's order. So now that you went ahead and you sold your after sale items in F&I, right? You did a great job with the interview. You did a great job with your menu presentation. You definitely sold the service contract, the gap waiver, possibly some other ancillary products as well. Make sure that you reprint that buyer's order that came to you from the sales floor with those options on it. Again, this is just going to be key. If you did have to go to court, you want to make sure all these documents are going to agree. Next, our retail installment contract, or the RIC as they call this in some dealerships. Yep, this big old long form we have here. You can also see we have a generic copy up on the screen here for you. So, the most important part of this really is going to be your disclosure area right here. I found at this point in the sale, you've gone through the buyer's order, the salesperson's gone through the buyer's order. You really don't find folks that are harping on this or looking to spend too much time on it. It's easy to go through. If you take a look at this area right here, the Federal Truth in Lending Disclosure, you definitely want to roll through this. Let them know what their APR is, what their monthly payments are, what the total cost is going to be, right? Including the APR. If they have questions about how interest rates work and so forth at that point, this is a great point for you to address them. Right? You can simply let clients know if they pay the vehicle off quicker, they're not going to be charged that interest and so forth. So I know this is certainly an awfully long document here. There is a bit to go through. Make sure that this does agree with all the information that is going to be on your buyer's order, right? We mentioned things have changed now that the deal has come into F&I, so make sure you are going through this with your clients and make sure all the information is accurate. So I feel like a flight attendant here too, by the way, so keep in mind your exits might be, or the closest exit might be behind you. All right, next up, our Form 8300. IRS Form 8300, also known as the FinCEN 8300 form. We do have a generic copy of this up on your screen as well. Keep in mind, you must report cash payments over $10,000. This is extremely, extremely important. I know some dealers sometimes forget, or there can be instances where a client has left a $2,500 deposit before they picked up the vehicle, and now they're putting another $7,500 down in the F&I office. It is very important that you're aware of this. So when I mention cash payments, obviously, I mean cash, right? Not a client coming in as a cash buyer with a check from a credit union. Reason for that is their bank has already verified that if the amount is over $10,000. So please, dealers, you can get in very hot water if you do not have these forms in place and you are not using them. Also, if you do think there's some suspicious activity, that's another time you may want to use this form as well. I know that's something that unfortunately is ongoing in our industry today. All right, and last but not least, our temporary tag. You can see we have an Arizona temp up on the screen here, and your plastic cover. I would recommend you go the extra step. I would always punch holes through these and get this ready for the salesperson too. So when they get outside and they're getting ready to get this temp tag on the vehicle, it's just an easier process for them. This also obviously weatherproofs the temp a little bit better. So dealers, if you're not using these, I know some states have plastic temp tags, but if you're in a state in Arizona, like where we have these paper ones, you definitely want to use these. I know many other states do too. These are very economical. You can pick these up, and it's just a good thing to do for the customer. Also, I mentioned, drilling your holes in here too. Salespeople, make sure you buckle this down onto the vehicle properly. Make sure it doesn't blow off during a rainstorm or a windstorm or so forth. Certainly don't want your clients getting pulled over and then giving you a call back. Hey, my temporary's gone, we have issues. It can certainly even be an issue to get a temporary reissued in some states, as we all very well know. So that's a wrap. That's all we have for you today at the Chris Haas Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. And again, a very special thanks to those of you that have liked and subscribed to my YouTube channel. If you haven't already done so, please do so. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be releasing very forward-thinking and pertinent content here on a weekly basis. You can also find me on other social media platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Chris Haas out.